The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
I'm privileged here to have somebody as a friend of mine who I've known you, Kevin, since pretty well the beginning of the pandemic. I think we knew one another a bit prior to that, but we really got to know one another well then. But to probably properly introduce you will probably take me half an hour, but I'm going to do the best with your official title. I believe it is Reverend Canon Dr. Kevin George, the Rector of St. Aidan's Anglican Church. Do I have that right?
Well, you have it right, except to say I'm just Kevin.
Yeah. No, I think Lorena Dixon on CGBK, she calls you, is it Revy Kevy?
Revy Kevin, yeah. When I was, I've been an uncle since the moment of conception.
Nice.
I have a nephew who's older than me, and I was always Uncle Kevy. Kevy. And then when I got ordained, my family started calling me Uncle Revy Kevy, and then it sort of stuck. So my nickname through the years has been Revy Kevy.
No, that's good. You and I have worked a fair bit in the last couple of years on some issues we'll get into later. But I did want to talk to you a bit. I wrote an article on you in the Free Press in January of 2021. So that was a year and a half ago. But I was talking about what faith groups were attempting to do to keep themselves alive during COVID. And it turned out that many of them were doing things that were to try to help the people that were marginalized. Yeah. They weren't just trying to get on Zoom and trying to have a religious service. They were finding unique ways to get out into the community. And I wonder if you could just tell us what some of the unique things that you came up with. You don't have to take too long, but some of them I thought were really quite innovative. What did you do when COVID hit? How did you figure out what you were going to do?
Well, it was, it's hard to imagine now. It's been over 2 years, actually, but after the initial shock of, okay, well, what do we do now? We're not gathering. It was really then became process of discernment and soul searching and prayer. Okay, well, how do we continue to keep our own people together? But also, what does it mean that we're being provoked or prodded or chased out of our buildings, in a sense? And I use those words intentionally because I realize that, there's a disease factor, a pandemic, but I also believe from a faith perspective, the Holy Spirit was active in this and we were being chased. The Celtics say that the Holy Spirit is like a wild goose and not a peaceful dove. A wild goose, if you live in this city, you can be chased by geese pretty well. And so I think we were being chased out, driven from our buildings. And so for us, it meant, Good Friday prayers and on the front lawn of the Middlesex London Detention Center. To try and highlight the state of what's going on with prisoners in that facility. It meant doing prayers around town in front of the police station. We went to different locations to do online prayers out in the wilderness to hold up, the nature that we have around us. We had a series with our young people of reading The Hobbit, where they'd go and read in different places and we'd make a video and send out. And then also just, we've become increasingly more aware of the earth around us. And so some of the projects that we got involved with you, Glenn, with Food Bank, around bringing these greenhouses in here and getting our people involved from planting seeds at home to harvesting vegetables to take to the neighborhood through the food bank has been another way for us to engage not just the people in our church, but we've got people who sign on from around the community who come to help with that. And we did that in the interfaith sense last year as well, with folks from the mosque and the temple coming as well.
Yeah. So Kevin, that's the local picture of where we're at, but I did want to ask you a pretty serious question because it has been troubling me. You and I are both people of religious sentiment, right? I'm United, and I know you're Anglican. Jane, my wife, was brought up in the Anglican Church, so she favors you more than me, I'm sure. But anyway,
as she should.
I am wondering, Kevin, so much of the work. I remember I think it was 25 years ago, somebody, a politician had said that it's time to do away with churches because, they're not really doing all that much. And I had started the food bank, started at the food bank just 5 years before that. So I started working with social services at City Hall, as well as interviewing a number of the groups that we had been helping as a food bank. And then we took a poll of those groups, of their volunteers, and also of their staff. And it turned out that 82% of the people that were involved in these different activities related to poverty and social justice were people of religious persuasion or from faith communities. So I took that back to the person who had said, the politician who has said this, and he was flabbergasted, right? He just had no idea. So I think I've always known, and I run into them everywhere. I meet Muslims have a food drive for somebody. The Sikhs do something to help a women's shelter. I know that the Christian churches work on things as well, and the Jewish folks have always been involved in social justice issues. But it's something that they do quietly. They don't talk about too much, so the public doesn't see them necessarily as relevant on these social issues. And for those of us who work in it, we know that they are. My question for you, and I think it's a very, very important one, as the poverty situation worsens, and as the dark clouds that are on the horizon economically, or with war, or with climate change, or with inflation, it goes on and on. For the people who are marginalized, they have really learned to trust and come to depend on the various faith persuasions to be there for them as they needed. As the churches and religious groups have had their troubles in the last few decades, numbers of dwindling, so on and so forth, I worry, to be honest with you, about the impact of that on all the lunch programs, the helping with housing, the women's programs, all of those things. I worry about the effect on that as governments to some degree withdraw from those realms. They really need this civil society to step up, and the churches and faith groups have really done that. Do you worry about that? Do you wonder what's going to happen if the faith groups themselves continue? They're struggling, they're doing their best, but that they continue to shrink?
Yeah, I do worry about it. And I've seen the effects of it, actually. I mean, even here in the city, we had a pretty robust program operating at a Bishop Cronin church downtown, which we've since closed. And with the closure of that community, that parish community, meant the disappearance of, a whole bunch of really neat stuff that was happening in that neighborhood. And a lot of us lamented at the time the fact that we were losing that. And my hope is, the hope I see, and I worry about it, but the hope I see in it is that with people like Todd Townsend, our bishop, who really has put an emphasis on trying to find ways for our communities, our churches, to be sort of a focal point for the neighborhood, for us to be a resource for the neighborhood. So that we're no longer or less focused on what's going on inside and more focused on what's going on out there.
Yeah.
And he seems really, intent on seeing us shift our focus that way. And I've seen here in my own community. So my hope is that as we restructure, because we really do need some serious renovation, not just a little touch up, as we close buildings, how do we, and this is the question that internally in the Anglican Church, I think we're all trying to navigate right now in the Diocese of Huron anyway, and beyond, is how do we now create strong centers of ministry in the city? And if they're not 17 or 18 anymore, if there are half a dozen, say 10 years down the road, how do we fund those half a dozen parishes in such a way, not just with money, but with resources and people? How do we steward them in such a way that what's going on in the neighborhood is a focus that's not down here with what's left over after we pay the bills and everything, but how do we start with the idea of our reason for being is to walk in the way of Jesus? And if we're going to walk in the way of Jesus, then that means we're going to have to go to where the weak and the vulnerable and the poor and the broken live, because there's no way to get around it in terms of Scripture. God has a disproportionate love for the poor. Mm-hmm. And it's incumbent upon us to find a way to do it. And I think in many ways we've lost sight of that. I mean, I think it's true what you said earlier, that we've always had strong pockets of it. But on the whole, the institution has often forgotten that that's our reason for being. And we've become so self-serving that we've lost sight of that. And so I hope that with the sale of buildings, for instance, we find ways to use those resources to build strong faith communities in our cities that can not just continue to work as being done, but actually increase it in such a way that we're actually making a bigger impact.
Yeah, I guess part of it, I remember my parents telling me, they struggled economically prior to World War II, but during the Depression, churches and faith groups became essential. As people traveled to them to try to get food or overnight lodging or, help because they couldn't find work because the Depression was on. And then after the war, that generation of people came together and decided they wanted to build institutions that dealt with these issues. So things like, hospitals, universities, healthcare, retirement programs, so on and so forth, and social programs. And those social programs, were well funded in most cases. It tended to go across the board because back in those days, the province paid 50% and the federal government paid 50% towards these different programs that were there. So the funding was fairly stable and it worked. And I think during that time, I think churches kind of retreated from this dealing with the people that you're talking about, the people that were on the margins, that faith groups are so good at doing during the Depression and previous to that, that we kind of got away from it. And now, as we're moving into this particular era that we are in now, as governments themselves begin to withdraw from that social services space and programs are either cut or minimized or whatever it's going to be, suddenly now churches are confronting a similar world that they confronted back in the Depression. So they will they have what it takes? Back then, they were far more populous than they are now.
And younger.
And will they have what it takes to be able to pivot now and help communities to reach that group of marginalized? Do you feel that same way about social programs and stuff got people to step out, or do you have a different view on that?
No, I think it did actually not only step out, but forget how to do it. I mean, I think a lot of our communities remember all those years ago, Pierre Burton called the comfortable pew, right? All those years ago, when the more that our government, gladly, I will say, because I believe in good, strong social nets from our government, stepped in. I think that for a lot of communities that were comfortable, and as communities, as church communities moved out of the core of our urban centers and started setting up in suburbs like this one, for instance, in these neighborhoods where poverty was the thing that happens down there.
Yeah.
And that church can deal with that, and we can funnel a little money or do a little something. And we've forgotten how to do it. And so for many of us, it's been about, I talk about it in terms of teaching discipleship. I think these are basic tenets of discipleship. I think that we're called in our baptism to seek and serve Christ in all persons, not some, not just the ones we like. We're called to strive for peace and unity among all people and respect the dignity of every human being. Imagine that. How do you deal with that? How do I respect the dignity of somebody I just spoke to on the street this morning, who I tried to help in some way, and Donald Trump on the other hand? I'm called to respect the dignity of both. That's difficult work, but we're also called to engage the environment around us and respect God's creation. And how do we do all of that? And so for me, I think if our communities are going to continue not just to do the work we're doing, but find a way to be more, I hesitate to use the word relevant, because I always believe the gospel of Jesus is relevant. I think sometimes the church has lost sight of the narrative of the gospel of Jesus. And so one of the things that at least I've tried to do, and I'm fortunate to belong to a community of St. Aidan's here, which actually tries as well, I think, is to continue to go back to that story, the good news story, the gospel story, and say, how do we live out this call that we've got in such a way that we can try and be more relevant, not because we want to be relevant in the milieu to culture, but more relevant to the gospel, more relevant into how we live, and that's going to take, and I hope we can partner with things like government, right? Like, so my hope is, I know sometimes governments have been shy to get involved in faith groups, and I get all that. And there's a lot of people who think we have an American ethos here of separation of church and state, which of course doesn't exist in Canada. But what I would hope is that the governments are able to pick up on what you said earlier, understand a rich history of how much support churches have given, not just churches, but faith groups, mosques, temples, all of that, but what these faith communities have given. And then with the monies that they want to target to do good work, what the government wants to target money to do good work, use the resources that are in our community to do that. So what I'm saying is, don't give us money to prop up my salary or to pay for a building, but make resources available to communities that have expertise. We would call it ministry experience in doing this work, and get it right on the ground, right where you need it,
Yeah. Kevin, 3 years ago, just prior to COVID, the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, of course, this meets every year, and it has the prime ministers. I think Donald Trump was there at that one. He was president back then. But they always get these dignitaries from around the world to come to it. So these are business leaders, nonprofits, so on and so forth. And for the first time, they had asked all of the faith leaders, the key ones around the world, to come together and speak to the conference. And they did. And what was so surprising to people that were there, I wrote about this too in the Free Press, what was so surprising was the level of cooperation they are actually doing now. Mm-hmm. And the reason why the World Economic Forum asked them to become part of it is because they were trying to address poverty or climate change, but it was the poorest regions of the world that were really, really set on by all of these things. And they realized, the Economic Forum, that it was actually faith groups that were in those areas. They were sacrificed. They were building field hospitals, right? They were trying to help people get settled as refugees. I mean, it goes on and on. I understand that. But I find it so interesting that at a time when the world's faiths are cooperating, and I want to get that into the next part of that in the next question. But at a time when that is happening, our politics has never been so divided. Yeah. Right? I've seen lots of businesses here in London who have combined to help with food drives, to help with housing, a number of different things. So even the faith community, the business community is coming together, and yet our politics does not reflect that. And I think in that sense, we need to set up a kind of alternative narrative that I think we probably had in Canada before politics became so big, and it was everything, and it had a huge following, and it wasn't as partisan. But it seems to me that on a global scale, the faith communities are coming together. The World Economic Forum sees that. So it's how we actualize that at a local level. So, and I know one of the ways that you have done that is, I know that when the terrible thing happened, a year ago, we just had the anniversary when the Muslim family was killed. You helped with leading the march to do all of that. But then you put a greenhouse at your church and called it Abraham's Tent. So I know you are very much involved in bringing the faith groups together, but not just to worship, but to actually have impact on the community and the marginalized. Can you go into that a bit as to what you do?
Yeah. So for me, I years ago had to confront my own bigotries, I suppose is the best way to put it, if I'd be bluntly honest. I mean, I grew up in a very homogeneous white Protestant culture in a small community in Newfoundland. And so that's what you're bathed in. And when you come out of that and you land in a multicultural place like London, Ontario, or previously Windsor, it's I had a lot of learning to do. And one of the hardest things for me to do was to shut up and listen, because if you know me, I talk a lot. And but I did, because I started to hear stories that I was unable to find words to respond to because of the pain and the hurt and the prejudice and the hatred. And it called me out of my own faith, it called me in my own faith to ask questions about, to go back to what I was saying earlier, how can I be faithful as a Christian if the minute I see somebody who's different than me, my immediate impulse is make them like me? Well, how do I respect the dignity of that person if that's how I respond? Yeah. And so, I began work down in Windsor and then carried that over here. So a lot of it is around relationship building. And so what that means is, when there was an attack in Pittsburgh on a mosque or on a temple, pardon me, on a synagogue. We showed up over at the temple here in London. When the attack happened in St. Foy, Quebec, we were on the step of the mosque. When there was a shooting in the churches in Sri Lanka, they filled St. Aidan's here. They came from the mosque and from the temple, and they filled the church. We try to stand alongside of one another. And quite organically, what's happened is myself and Imam Abdel Fattah Tawakkol and Rabbi Deborah Dressler have sort of the three of us become leaders in this, I guess, because what I have found personally are two very willing partners. We see the world differently. We can't get around that. Our faiths are very different. But our call to love and justice, peace and honor, respect among people, those things are the same. And so, when I finished this 55-hour sermon I did here a few years ago, the first guy to greet me when I got off stage with a big embrace was Imam Tawakkol. And he is one of my closest friends in faith. Mm-hmm. And so I think that for me, I think the way forward for us as Christian communities is to be in better relationship with other faith communities. And I believe that to be true of them as well. So whether it's Abraham's tent or coming together in crisis or finding ways to address issues around us that come up as they come up. I know Deborah Dressler and I have been talking in this last couple of weeks after the march here about how to more formalize our relationships so that we might be able to respond more quickly to social need in our community and mobilize our communities to actually do some more work.
Yeah. And it's also true that in Canada, the Muslim faith is growing. A lot of that is immigration, but it's growing. The Christian faith is somewhat shrinking, and the Jewish faith is staying largely the same. But the reality is they do represent significant resources, especially in the area of people power and compassion. So do you think that we will... Do you see a time when you think that we will take that coming together as different faiths and then pivot together to take on some of these larger challenges together? Because it seems to me the Anglicans have their work to do, and the homeless, the United do the same, the Jewish community do the same, the Muslims do the same. If we combine our efforts, it'd be very interesting. But do you see that coming?
Well, I pray it's coming. I pray that it's coming at least in the way that we can honor the diversity that's in it and support one another in perhaps separate focuses we may have. Yeah. Because, it may come to pass that the work that we might be able to do here at St. Aidan's might be direct. For instance, recently on a controversial subject, we erected those doors for Pride Month. Yeah. That's a very different thing than what the mosque is going to do. And they had their own issues out of what happened up at the campus with the poster, right? Yeah. So we have to understand when Imam Tawakkol and I come together that we have different views on this, but our spirit, our heart for what we're trying to do is the same, which is to love people and to uphold people. And so I pray that we're going to get to the place
and to prioritize the marginalized, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All of them have that in common.
Yeah. That's right. And I think that we need to get to a place, one of the things I found out in my research in Windsor when I was doing my doctoral work, which was in this area in interfaith work, there are far more Muslims in Windsor than there are Anglicans. Mm-hmm. And so, but if you would talk to most white bread Anglicans down there, they'd think, we're it. Yeah. So that's the challenge. That's the hump that we got to get over, is to realize that our neighbors, our friends, our people on the PTA and at the soccer field and everywhere else, they come in multi-faith and pluralistic ways to our communities now. And we have to find ways to mobilize the works of goodwill that are true to all of them in a unified way to have the most impact.
Yeah, it seems to me that poverty we're losing it. We're losing our ability to really impact what's going on. And what people tend to do is that they then focus on politics. They want politics to fix this problem. The difficulty is that politics is so divided. And I can speak for that from personal experience, but it really is there. On the other hand, if civil society, with faith groups and others, are able to combine and pivot and combine their efforts, so that would be all of the agencies coming together to work with one another rather than all operate independently as they often do. For funders to do the same thing, right? Yeah. For faith groups to come together and say, the problem of poverty is now so great, or even climate change, that only our combined efforts are going to allow us to be able to address it, because we can't see a political solution at the moment coming out of this because it's so divided. But it would seem to me if the different faiths came together and they helped to focus this community on the marginalized and what can be done. They could also resource it, they could help to fund, they could use their buildings, they could provide emotional and spiritual leadership, right? I think that would be really important, and I would hope that we would see that, and I just get this sense if it does happen, you're going to be in the middle of all of that.
Well, I hope I am, because I think it's critical work. Because I do believe you're right. I mean, I think how much easier would it be for the government of Ontario or the government of Canada to look at London as an example and say, we've got funding that we want to use to fight poverty or combat climate change. Yeah. And instead of having to have, like we do in a lot of the nonprofit sector, instead of having competing interests, here's a body faithful in London. And really mean that in the broadest sense of the word, people of faith and goodwill from across the region that are working cooperatively to address poverty in the city or to fight climate change in the city. For the government to be able to say, yeah, we'll partner with that, because that's not supporting the Anglicans or the Jewish community or the Roman Catholics or whatever. This is supporting the effort of poverty reduction, and we're using the faith community, which has now pulled its resources together. And I don't just mean money here; I mean people. More importantly, then you know, I think it will be much easier for us, and we all want this. Like we all want this, you know. Our faiths drive us to say we must do something about this, and but it all begins with not seeing the other as other. Right. It all begins with getting past that hump of you know, whether it's bigotry or religious bigotry or fear or xenophobia or all that stuff. Once we overcome that, we can get somewhere. Yeah.
You know, Kevin, for people like me, I tend to look at bigger picture stuff, but you know, when I think of the pandemic and what we all went through as a community, the business community gave us this large amount of funds to help us to distribute greenhouses free of charge or green walls free of charge. And I reached out to you trying to figure out a way to get that started. And you didn't take a greenhouse, you took 3. Right, and that's what you did. So last week when we had the Curb Hunger Food Drive, which is run by the City of London, not by the Food Bank, they had it at St. Aidan's Church. So there was an understanding there, right at the side of Sifton Bog. You had green walls growing up there on the thing. You had 3 greenhouses. We're out of time here, but I just wanted to thank you for taking our faith and not just trying to combine it with other faiths, but to reorient it again towards the original messages that were true in the Jewish scriptures or in the Quran, or whatever, right? That we focus on the marginalized, because that's what communities should do. And I just wanted to thank you for doing that, Kevin. I think you've been a bright light in this community in a very, very dark time. And I hope you realize just how much you and the good folks at St. Aidan's have done for us as a community, that we're looking at what you're doing as something that's very present in the moment and meeting people that are struggling.
Well, that's very kind of you. I mean, the people here are incredible at this community, I believe.
But I just want to thank you on behalf of the community. I know that the mayor was there at the press conference. He's very aware of what St. Aidan's is doing and what other faith groups are doing as well. But I think the importance to poverty and the alleviation of poverty and social justice, I just can't see it being successful without the faith communities coming together. And I think you've really taken us a long way along that. So thank you, Kevin.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
We want to take the time
to thank our volunteers.
Whether you're a community producer, on-air talent,
or part of the production crew,
you have made an incredible commitment
to serve our community
during the pandemic.
We couldn't have done it without you.
We couldn't have done it without you.
We couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you for showing up
and stepping up in another unusual year.
We appreciate you and all you do
for Rogers TV.
This is Rogers TV.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the RTV Quiz Show, the hottest show on television. I'm your host, Giovanni Petiti, and you are the luckiest people on the planet because you're in for a half an hour of nonstop excitement where we play trivia for valuable, non-existent prizes, all right? Folks, before we get started, I want to take this opportunity to give you a sincere thank you for putting this show on the map. Another fantastic season of the RTV Quiz Show, thanks to you guys and all your love on the Insta Snap, on the Face Chat, on the WhatsApps. Anyway, you guys, I love this show, and we're going to keep on doing it, but we're going to take a little break over the summer because I got too much talent not to take the summer off. I'm in Johnny Carson territory now I don't know who that is. I'm in Arsenio Hall territory. That guy takes a lot of time off. He's been taking a lot of time off lately. Anyway, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. But don't worry, we'll be back in the fall with more new, exciting episodes. In the meantime, you can watch some repeat shows and impress your friends like you've never seen it. You know, the answers are just coming to you. You could be like a RTV quiz show fraudster. Anyway, here we go, round one. Right, round one, all right, the very exciting category of schools out for the summer. In this category, we're going to explore movies that take place at the end of the school year. Question number one, what movie musical concludes with characters Danny and Sandy at the end of the year carnival? And I'm thinking about starting this summer romance here. I have a little tip for you. I have a friend who says he doesn't like what he's catching on Plenty of Fish. So I said, why don't you look in the mirror and see what you're using for bait? Gary, that's for you, buddy. That's for you. Hashtag get a nose hair clipper. Question number two. What 2007 high school comedy featured the characters Seth, Evan, and McLovin? Fun fact, folks, I believe that one of these actors did not finish high school in real life. And according to an interview on Entertainment Tonight, he said finishing high school never affected him in any way. He was quoted as saying, look at Albert Einstein. He never finished high school, and he still became the first man to land on the moon. So. Question number three, what Richard Linklater movie was promoted with the tagline, it was the last day of school in 1976, a time they'd never forget, if only they could remember. What they say about the 1970s, folks, if you can remember the 1970s, then you're really old. Question number four, what 1989 movie features a summer romance before college and John Cusack holding a boombox over his head? Oh, that movie, huh? I hated that movie. First of all, thanks for ruining it for the rest of us, hey? This guy with this big romantic gesture, he holding a boombox out front of the girl's window and it gets the girl. First of all, that's so unrealistic, all right? If anybody knows anything about the 80s, that boombox weighed 375 pounds. He's bench pressing like it's nothing, right? It takes 47 D-cell batteries, all right? You go to Radio Shack, it's going to cost you $263 plus tax. And if I remember correctly, the girls in the 80s with the big hair, the hairspray, stuff, I can't think of one girl that was that good looking that's worth $375 worth of batteries and a hernia. Like, maybe it's just... Okay, question number five. What movie starring Jennifer Love Hewitt was about a high school grad party? Was it A, American Pie, B, Fast Times at Ridgemount High, C, Can't Hardly Wait, or D, 10 Things I Hate About You? Just 10? Just 10. Or the sequel that takes place after they get married, called The 10,000 Things I Hate About You. Jeez, I hate the way you inhale all the time. Right, time for round two. All right, the category is water sports. Water sports. That means that all the answers in this category will be stupid sports. Question number 6. What Olympic sport was once called water ballet? Never been to a water ballet, but I'm guessing it's probably a flop. Question number 7. What water sport consists of 6 field players and a goalie on each team? Water soccer. Question number 8. Kelly Slater from Cocoa Beach, Florida, is often considered the all-time greatest at what sport? You know, folks, I think I want to be famous for chasing popsicle sticks down the gutter after a big rain. That could be a new Olympic sport, you know? Question 19. What racing sport originated in the Pearl River Delta region of China and employs up to 22 teammates? I don't think I could play a sport with 22 teams. Can you imagine that? There'd be no room on the bench for me. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know. I'd be worried. Question number 10. In the sport of rowing, what is the name of the team member who steers the boat and coordinates the power and rhythm of the rowers by communicating to the crew? Rowers. Forgot to warm up my tongue. All right, time for round one. Round one answers. Right, the category was schools out for the summer. These are all summer movies that take place at the end of the school year. Question number 1 was, what movie musical concludes with characters Danny and Sandy at the end of the year carnival? That was Grease. Remember that, you know? Summer lovin' had me a blast. Summer lovin' happened too fast. Something like that, right? Question number 2, what 2007 high school comedy featured the characters Seth, Evan, and McLovin? That movie was Superbad. Question number 3, what Richard Linklater movie was promoted with the tagline, "It was the last day of school in 1976, a time they'd never forget, if only they could remember"? Yeah, the name of that movie was Dazed and Confused. Question number 4, what 1989 movie features a summer romance before college and John Cusack holding a boombox over his head? The movie was called Say Anything. Question number 5, what movie starring Jennifer Love Hewitt was about a high school grad party? The answer was C, Can't Hardly Wait. Question number 6, what Olympic sport was once called water ballet? The answer is synchronized swimming or artistic swimming. Question number 7, what water sport consists of 6 field players and a goalkeeper on each team? That's water polo. I never understood that sport, man. Like, how do they teach those horses how to swim? Question number 8, Kelly Slater from Cocoa Beach, Florida, is often considered the all-time greatest at what sport? The answer is surfing. I will also accept shark bait. Fun fact, folks, I've never actually seen anybody surf. I've never even seen a surfboard. The closest I've ever come is I've seen an ironing board once, which kind of makes me think it was a surfboard who just gave up on his dreams and got a real job. Question number 9, what racing sport originated in the Pearl River Delta region of China and employs up to 22 teammates? That's called dragon boat racing. Question number 10, in the sport of rowing, what is the name of the team member who steers the boat and coordinates the power and rhythm of the rowers by communicating to the crew? That guy is known as the guy who thinks he knows everything. I will also accept coxswain. Fun fact, there's nothing funny about that answer. We'll be back right after this.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Mario Elia, and I'm the host of a new show here on Rogers TV that we're calling Keeping London Healthy with Dr. Mario. So tune in Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. and we'll see you then.
I'm sure right now a lot of you feel like you aren't able to be who you truly are.
What's most important, more important than everybody else knowing who you are, is that you know who you are.
As a young person, time moves slower for you. And just know that things will get better.
It Gets Better Canada is a registered Canadian charity with a focus on uplifting our queer youth through the power of digital storytelling.
As a Two-Spirit person, I use they, them pronouns, but that's not the case for every Two-Spirit person.
There are so many voices out there that we didn't have 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
No matter what your mind tells you, you really are perfect the way you are, so stop beating yourself up so much.
I'm gonna be a boy in a dress, because why not?
Your identity is explosive.
We all have our unique journeys, but one thing that connects us all is the desire to be happy, the desire to celebrate being our authentic selves.
Your mouth can do a lot of amazing things. And your mouth can save a life.
Hi, I'm Tom Wong. I'm just one of close to 1,000 Canadians in search of a stem cell match. We need your help.
A simple swab is all you need to register on the National Stem Cell Database. You could be the one to save a life. Find the hero in you.
Coxswain. Coxswain. All right, folks, welcome back. Nothing's funny, nothing. Welcome back to the RTV Quiz Show, the hottest show on television. Thanks to you guys for putting this show on the map. Already got round 3. The category is I Think You Should Leaf. It's all about trees is the category. That's a little pun there. All right, question number 11. The tree that this leaf comes from can be tapped for 150 years or more. What tree is it? To give you a hint, folks, that tree comes with a 15% GST. That's question number 12. It's important to note that this plant produces leaf clusters in groups of 3. What is it? Take your time with this one, folks. You don't want to make any rash decisions. I think I strained my eye. Question 13. The leaf of this tree played a prominent role in the book of Genesis. What tree is it from? Yes, folks, in case you're wondering about this shirt, I am wearing the matching underwear. Question 14. The leaves of this tree are accompanied by tennis ball-shaped seeds. What tree is it? The tree's not bragging, it's just fact. Question 15. The bark from this tree can be used in the construction of canoes. What is it? That would be the fiberglass tree. What does this mean? Oh, it's fill in time, stretch it out. Fun facts, folks. Fiberglass is neither fiber nor glass. Discuss. Right, time for round 4. All right, the category is portmanteaus. Portmanteau. Relax, everybody relax, okay? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay, let me give you a few examples, all right? Okay, Sam, for example, you get iPad and broadcast, you get a podcast. You see, that's because they're together, all right? So you get Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, you get Brangelina. You get man and explaining, you get mansplaining. You see how they got together? Okay. So, ladies, if you didn't get the last one, mansplaining is when a man explains something to you that he thinks you might not know, but you would obviously know it. Okay, here we go. Question 16. India's film industry is known by what portmanteau? That's two words together. Their industry, their movie industry. Two words together. Question 17. The Caesar is made with vodka and what vegetable drink? Okay. The non-vodka part of the drink has it's two words together. Some kind of food and another kind of food. Question 18. The Last Waltz, Give Me Shelter, and Stop Making Sense are all examples of what movie genre? Type of music, a type of movie. Well, some people who are watching this show are from Ottawa, so they might need you know what I'm saying? Question 19. What hook and loop fastener was invented by Swiss electrical engineer George de Mestral? I don't know if he actually invented it or he just ripped it off. Question number 20. Somewhere in your house, you likely have a modular demodular, which is better known as what? Your spouse. Which comes from two words, spoiled and louse. Wow. All right, time for round 3. All right, the category is I think you should leaf. All right, let's see how you did on identifying these leaves and trees. Here we go. Question number 11. The tree that this leaf comes from can be tapped for 150 years or more. What tree is it? It's the maple or sugar maple. Now that I reread the question, if you can tap this for 150 years or more, I will not only accept sugar maple, I will accept sugar daddy. Question number 12. It's important to note that this plant produces leaf clusters in groups of 3. What is it? The answer is poison ivy. Oh, folks, speaking of poison ivy, it looks like in the University of Dublin, Ireland, scientists are trying to cross a 4-leaf clover with poison ivy. Apparently, the scientists are hoping to get a rash of good luck. Question 13. The leaf of this tree played a prominent role in the book of Genesis. What tree is it from? That's a fig leaf. That's a fig leaf. Question 14. The leaves of this tree are accompanied by tennis ball-shaped seeds. What tree is it? I knew this because I actually have this tree in my backyard. The answer is black walnut tree. I will also accept walnut tree. I'll also accept son of a beech tree who drops more nuts than a veterinary clinic. Question number 15. The bark of this tree can be used in the construction of canoes. What is it? That's a birch tree, a birch tree. Here we go. Question number 16. India's film industry is known by what portmanteau? That's Bollywood. Bollywood. Combination of Bombay and Hollywood. Question number 17. The Caesar is made with vodka and what vegetable drink? That's clamato. Clamato. Combination of clam juice and tomato juice. Clamato. Oh! Fun fact, folks, speaking of Julius Caesar, very exciting news from the world of ancient history. It looks like that ancient historians have recently discovered that Julius Caesar's last words were not et tu, Brute. Apparently, Julius Caesar's last words were, name a salad after me. Question 18. The Last Waltz, Give Me Shelter, and Stop Making Sense are all examples of what movie genre? That's a rockumentary. A fun fact, folks, I hear they're turning The Last Waltz into a book. The critics are saying the book is like a puppy, easy to pick up, but hard to put down. It's nothing personal. It's not you. Question number 19. What hook and loop fastener was invented by Swiss electrical engineer George de Mistral? That's Velcro. Velcro. It comes from the word velvet and crochet. Question number 20. Somewhere in your house, you're likely to have a modulator demodulator, which is better known as what? A modem. I was serious before, folks. I will also accept spouse. Because when my spouse talks to me, it sounds like those modems from the 1990s, right? Don't go away, folks. We got round 5 coming up right after this.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m., it's the RTV quiz. Giovanni Petiti hosts a weekly trivia competition that lets you play from the comfort of your couch. Play along at home and challenge your friends. And don't forget to follow along on social media. Let us know who's top of trivia, and you can find yourself featured on a future episode.
Are you kidding me, folks?
The RTV quiz, Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Rogers TV or at rogerstv.com/RTV quiz.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
My name's Ranger M. I love to knowledge share, and that's just what I'm going to do with you. So come on, let's go learn with Ranger M.
I'm Jennifer Slay, the host of What's Up London. Join me each week as I meet Londoners who are doing extraordinary things and helping to make the city a better place to live. Watch What's Up London Mondays only on Rogers TV.
And welcome back to round 5. Folks, for this category, every answer has the word summer in it. So here we go. Question number 21. What type of vegetable is this? It's easy. That's the Chernobyl lemon. Question 22. Which queen of disco sang the song I Feel Love and Love to Love You Baby? Ah, love to love you, baby. Fun fact, folks, I'm going to be spending most of the summer performing in karaoke bars, doing mostly 1970 disco hits. I've gotten better, but at first I was afraid. I was petrified. Question 23. In 1988 at Madison Square Garden, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage teamed up against the Mega Bucks in the inaugural edition of what WWE event? Fun fact, folks, for people who are watching this show in Buffalo, you might not realize this, but the wrestling is completely fake. It's completely fake. Most women know this because men not only can fake an entire sport, but they can fake an entire relationship. So it's no big surprise to them. Question number 24. What 1984 song includes the lyrics, "Out on the road today and saw a dead head sticker on a Cadillac"? Deadheads, that's from the Grateful Dead. Fans of the Grateful Dead. This band was named after a group of guys that were happy they're not in a long-term relationship. I don't know. Question 25. What comic play featured the characters Theseus, Nick Bottom, and Puck? These names are not even real. They sound made up like they're nicknames. Folks, let me give you a bit of advice. Never try to force a nickname on yourself. It should come organically, like other people should give it to you. Take it from me, Giovanni the Jackhammer Petiti. Time for round 5. Answers. That was only 4, bro. It's only 4. Answers. The category is summer break. All the answers have the word summer in it. Question 21. What type of vegetable is this? It's a summer squash. Summer squash. You can tell because if it was a winter squash, it would be wearing a parka. I don't know. Question 22. Which queen of disco sang the songs I Feel Love and Love to Love You Baby? That's Donna Summer. You know it's not Donna Winter because she would be wearing a parka. Question 23. In 1988 at Madison Square Garden, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage teamed up against the Mega Bucks in the inaugural edition of what WWE event? That's SummerSlam. Question 24. What 1984 song includes the lyrics, "Out on the road today, I saw a dead head sticker on a Cadillac"? That's The Boys of Summer. The Boys of Summer. Fun fact, folks, when I was a teenager, I was featured regularly in a little something we used to call Boys of Summer School. Now, it was a brilliant educational strategy when, calculus is so much easier to understand when it's a beautiful day outside and your friends are down by the beach with the girls of summer. And they can find the derivative. Question number 25. What comic play featured the characters Theseus, Nick Bottom, and Puck? That was, of course, A Midsummer Night's Dream. I read that book, and that's not what no guy has ever dreamed about that in Midsummer Night. Folks, that's all the time we have for this show and this season, but we're going to catch you again in September, right? Meantime, be safe, be calm, and be nice.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Tyler Fines, host of Off the Puck Hockey on Rogers Channel 20. We interview some of the biggest names in hockey and sports. Check us out, Rogers Channel 20, Off the Puck Hockey. Let's go.
Rogers TV has given me a ton of opportunities, including meeting new people, getting involved with my local community, and trying a ton of variety of different production roles, such as graphics, camera, and audio.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, some people used the A word. They called it an accident, but it wasn't. An accident implies that no one was at fault. But when someone impaired by alcohol and/or drugs chooses to drive, they're fully responsible for the crash that can result. So please, for the memory of my brother DJ and the thousands of families whose lives have been shattered by impaired drivers, let's drop the A word.
A crash caused by impaired driving is not an accident.
Looking for the best way to get the Major League Baseball games you want to watch? Rogers Super Sports Pack has you covered. With MLB Extra Innings, you'll have a premium ticket to out-of-market regular season games with